Motoring 2008 on TSN is brought to you by the new Q horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.
Go west, young man, and that's exactly what motoring has done this week as we find ourselves in sunny Southern California. And you know, along with the sun and the surf, if a vehicle is new, you'll probably find it first on the streets here in California. And they like their luxury vehicles. And speaking of luxury, it was about 16 years ago that Nissan decided it needed a luxury division and came up with Infiniti. It's been a good run. In fact, 03-04, Infiniti actually outsold Lexus. But things have been a bit of a slide recently, so Infiniti has freshened up its product and also brought in some new vehicles like the G37. But Infiniti decided it needed a new vehicle in a new segment, so this week we're going to check out the EX35.
The EX35 represents an opportunity for Infiniti because we're expanding our lineup. We're going into an area of the market we haven't been in before. So the vehicle's positioned a lot differently than the FX35 and FX45.
I think it's a really good idea. From a technical standpoint, it's basically G35 sedan underneath, so it was a really easy engineering feat in that regard. But it's also a really well-sized vehicle. I think that they said we're going to go out and make a 5-passenger crossover, and that's exactly what they've done. It's nice and compact, nice and low to the ground. It doesn't have any aspirations to be off-roadable or some sort of trail tackling vehicle, but it's really good on-road, and it has all those essence of the G sedan in it with a little bit more cargo room and headroom.
It's based on the FM platform. The FM platform, it underpins all the Infiniti products except for QX56 and Nissan 350Z. So it's similar in size to the G35 sedan, but has a shorter wheelbase, which improves turning circle and maneuverability of the vehicle. And of course, like many of our FM platform vehicles, it comes standard with a Tesla all-wheel drive.
Infiniti has been knocked from day one for the quality of its interiors. They really were very shoddy. You know, they start with a pie. This is how much money you can spend on the car. After you've taken the slice out for the engine, the bit for the transmission, the bit for the suspension, the bit for the body, the bit for the R&D and the engineering, all of a sudden you're left with a little tiny slither left over, and they whew, we haven't done the interior yet. So they were dreadful from that perspective. They're now where they should be. They're competitive with the other vehicles in this segment, certainly up there with BMW.
The EX35 comes standard with roof racks, but only in Canada, not in the United States. And I asked Infiniti why, and they said, well, the Americans just aren't into roof racks. And you know what? I think they're right. I mean, let's be honest. You could pay over $50,000 for this vehicle. Are you going to throw an old tent or an old sofa on top of this? I don't think so.
Powertrain is a 3.5-liter VQ engine, and it puts out 297 horsepower. So it's tuned a little differently than other applications in our lineup, but still within that segment, it's one of the most powerful vehicles.
Nice car. The only thing that I'm looking after is that even Infiniti doesn't seem to be very sure where that vehicle will go. For now, it goes right in the hand of the FX35. I mean, it is a little smaller, but basically it's the same approach. They will probably get some sales from the FX to the EX. This is not a wagon purely because they don't want to dress it as a wagon. It is. It falls in between categories, and when buyers are not clear about what they want to choose, or if they have doubts, they will go elsewhere. And for now, they're in no man's land with this vehicle for the category to choose for. So basically, Nissan will have to make this pretty clear. This is a very nice vehicle overall. But still, I don't know where they're going with that in the market.
We're very enthusiastic about getting new customers because today it really fits a place in the market we don't have anything to offer people. And also, we know we've got lots of loyal Infiniti owners, and when they come back to buy another vehicle, it gives us another option we can present them. And from a business standpoint, hopefully that's another vehicle that we can offer them and perhaps prevent them from leaving to go to a competitive brand.
If you don't even know where the target is, it's hard to hit that bullseye. More later on Kenzie's Corner.
On this edition of Test Drive, we take a look at the Lexus LS600HL. It is a hybrid, but it also has some really neat technology that's a harbinger of what we're going to see down the road. The H and L in the 600's nameplate tells you two things. First, it's a hybrid, and second, it comes with a stretch wheelbase. The base car and its 2969mm wheelbase makes for a big car. The stretch version puts a time zone into the rear seat. At 3090mm from wheel unto shiny wheel, it is a monster. So what do you do if your own personal masseuse happens to be out of town? If you own this Lexus, you simply get in, assume the position. I think today I'll have the shihatsu, and just to make sure I don't get too bored, I'll flick on my favorite episode of motoring. The only downside to all of this pampering, the trunk is tiny. The hybrid part is really interesting because you get V12 power with V6 fuel economy. To achieve this, the 600 marries a sophisticated 5-litre V8 engine to large high-output electric motors and a new 288-volt nickel-metal hydride battery pack to deliver a rewarding 438 horsepower and up to 385 pound-feet of torque. This is enough power to waft a heavy 2,290-kilogram car to 100 kilometers an hour in about 6 seconds. Remarkably, though, it's not the initial launch that impresses, but rather the mid-range. The 600 passes a slower-moving vehicle in what seems like the blink of an eye. 4.7 seconds, to be exact. Now, everybody knows that this Lexus can park itself, but it also has another neat party trick, and it's called the Advanced Pre-Collision System. Now, this thing uses a number of sensors. There's a radar behind the Lexus badge, 2 cameras on either side of the rear view mirror, which form a 3D image of everything out here, as well as a camera that looks at the driver's face. So it knows if I'm looking down the road and paying attention, or I'm staring off into space. So what happens if you get somebody like me that wanders out in front of the Lexus? Well, everything starts to leap to action. First of all, the suspension hunkers down. Secondly, the steering is sharpened and the brakes are primed. Now, when the driver does make an evasive maneuver, the response is instantaneous. But if the driver remains in la-la land, this car will actually apply the brakes. Now, what I find really interesting, if you take the ability to turn the steering wheel, which is part of the parking maneuver thing, and you combine it with the ability to apply the brakes, and you bring the two technologies together, you end up with a car that can not only brake, it can also steer around an obstacle. Now that's what you call technology at its finest. Normally, when you combine regenerative braking and hydraulic braking into a single system, it brings a mushy pedal that's difficult to modulate. Not here, as the pedal is alive and the system brings short stopping distances that bring the Lexus to rest in just 42.7 meters. If you spend 160 large on a car, you better get everything, including the kitchen sink. In this vehicle you do. Everything is automatic and is absolutely first class in its quality. However, the coup de grace, the radio. The Mark Levinson unit puts out 450 watts through 19 different speakers. Now, the acoustical quality that you get is superb. To put it into perspective, if you took this unit and the 19 speakers and had to customize a room in your house to get the same sort of sound quality as you get inside this car, you'd be looking at about $200,000. The long list of technology continues with an electronically controlled, continuously variable transmission that features normal, power and sport modes. Now, this thing is as smooth as anything offered. From here, the power is relayed to the road through an advanced all-wheel drive system that sends 40% of the power to the front wheels and 60% to the rear under normal driving conditions. Obviously, it can split the power evenly when there's the demand. Then there's the adaptive suspension. It simultaneously delivers comfort while controlling unwanted body motion. It delivers the best of both worlds in a single system. This LS600 HL really is a remarkable piece of engineering. Everything from the powertrain, I mean it's hybrid that gives you V12 power from a V8 engine, all the way through to a system that will actually save lives. Yes, some of it is over the top. I mean, who really needs a massaging rear seat? What I find most interesting, however, as technologically advanced as this car is, it really only begins to scratch the surface of what you can expect to see tomorrow.
Closed captioning of Motoring 2008 is brought to you in part by Chevrolet Malibu Hybrid, the most affordable midsize hybrid in Canada.
The route might change from year to year, but the Trans-Siberia Rally is considered the ultimate challenge for off-road racing. The most recent event began in Moscow, 7,100 kilometers from the final destination, Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia. 37 teams competed from various car manufacturers, including Suzuki, Mercedes, Land Rover, and Toyota. Porsche entered 25 teams featuring Porsche Cayennes. Automobile journalist Lawrence Yap was the navigator on the lone Canadian team.
A little nervous. These were two parts of the world I'd never seen before, and I couldn't think of any other opportunity where I would be able to see this. And to do it, behind the wheel of a race car in a competitive style event, and a lot of it off-road, was just, too exciting to pass up.
Okay, that's the first one for you too? Absolutely. Yeah.
I was driving with Kees Nierop, who is a Porsche factory driver back in the 1980s. He raced at Le Mans, he won the 12 Hours of Sebring, he's a very experienced road racer. This was the first time either of us had done an off-road event. It was one of the final stages of the rally. We just had our time card stamped. About 4 minutes later, we were crossing a really vast sort of plain. You have this sort of undulating landscape, and it looks very flat, and you kind of drive up, and then you drive down the other side, and it's very gentle, and it all looks so consistent. But essentially what happened is we drove up the side of one of these things, and it dropped off suddenly.
Okay, good. I think we're out of this rally. I think so.
There was this moment where, we were up in the air and we kind of looked at each other and went, oh. But, I think we were both very thankful that, for all of the preparation that had been done in the car with the roll cage and with the safety harnesses and everything else, because we were able to walk away from it. It was only after we climbed out that we realized that through all of these impacts, the engine had sheared off and had landed about 30 meters away. And, we kind of took a look around, and all of our possessions were strewn all over the countryside. I had a small cut on the top of my head that they had to bandage up to make it look ridiculous, but otherwise we were both fine. I'm a little bit sore, but otherwise things are all right. I'm glad that we were in such a safe vehicle. It really, instilled me with a lot of confidence about the product and about how well engineered it is, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to get back into another one.
The new Infiniti EX35, as you might expect, comes loaded with technology, including intelligent all-wheel drive. It also comes loaded with cameras. Not only a backup camera, you even get a bird's eye view. Now, hey, I've been driving a long time, and I just can't get used to these cameras. If I want to back into a spot, I still use my mirrors. But hey, maybe it's an age thing. So with that in mind, I asked one of the younger guys covering the automotive scene, Bradley Horn, what he thought about it.
I think it's kind of neat gadgetry. I mean, at the end of the day, you still have to be a good driver, though. I mean, you can't rely on technology that much, you know. But it'll be interesting to see too. On the flip side of that is a lot of the older drivers who can afford this vehicle, because it's like $55,000 loaded. So I noticed the screens are really, really small. So you know, you have to make sure you got your bifocals on to look at them.
Well, as you younger people like to say, whatever. Anyway, let's now join another mature member of the motoring team. That's our man in the Quaker State Garage, Bill Gardner.
Hey Brad, I take exception to the word mature, certainly as it relates to one's age. However, it certainly beats being described as immature, so maybe I'll take it. And when it comes to technology, if it's under the hood of your vehicle and it makes the internal combustion engine run better, give better fuel economy, more power, better drivability, I'm all for it. If it's technology like cars that park themselves so that uncoordinated people can drive, not good. Not interested, thank you very much. What I want to talk about this week is platinum or iridium tipped spark plugs, and these precious metals have been used in spark plugs as original equipment on many cars since the mid-90s. Now by the late 90s and around the year 2000 or thereabouts, most manufacturers had completely switched over to the more expensive platinum or iridium tipped spark plugs. Now these new spark plugs that are in cars today have maintenance or replacement intervals of approximately 160,000 K. The old spark plugs, conventional type spark plugs that they replaced, were only good for about 50,000 K. So here's the dilemma in the service industry. We get cars coming in all the time where people just never think of changing the spark plugs, and mechanics are as guilty as anyone because they don't want to get in there and change them either. A lot of the installations are very tough to get at. They really don't want to do it unless they absolutely have to. So now we find cars coming in. A perfect example, I had a Honda Accord the other day in '99. 105,000 K, still had the original plugs, but it had the old style plugs in '99. They're only good for 50,000 K, so he was twice the interval. Had a Dodge minivan with 150,000 K, same deal. It was a '99 3-liter Mitsubishi, conventional spark plugs. 150,000 K was 3 times the interval. That Dodge minivan was running like a piece of junk, misfiring, stalling, bucking and hesitating, running so bad for so long that it had plugged its catalytic converter. Now it's a pretty expensive fix. The customer, and this was a first-time customer, gave me a stack of invoices this thick from a dozen different places that had serviced this van. And not one of them ever changed the spark plugs in this van. And these were not second-rate places they were going to. They were paying big bucks for pro auto service, and nobody took the time to do the spark plugs or mentioned that they should have been changed. Eventually, big repair bill to fix it. I want you to go and do some homework. Go and check your vehicle, and we'll ask the question on next week's show, what's your car got? Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2008.
You know, I don't know about you, but the older I get, the more I dislike the cold. And take my word for it, it is really cold out here today. No snow, but a couple of weeks ago we did have a snowstorm, and believe me, it was actually enjoyable driving this vehicle. In fact, I hope we get another snowstorm before I've got to take this Subaru back. The reason it was enjoyable is 2 things. One, full-time all-wheel drive, and it's equipped with 4 winter tires. Another great feature on this Impreza is that they have a built-in wiper de-icer in the windshield. Other manufacturers have had it. Subaru has had it forever. And you know, it's a great safety feature because now the wipers can do what they're supposed to do, and that is keep your windshield clean.
We're here at the Detroit Auto Show again, and you know, we're staying at a hotel called the Renaissance Marriott in downtown Detroit, and Renaissance is a pretty good way to describe what's happening to this particular company. This is the General Motors stand. Now, with the North American Car and Truck of the Year Awards announced a couple of days ago, General Motors had 4 of the 6 finalists, 2 out of 3 in car, 2 out of 3 in truck. They did win overall Car of the Year with the Malibu. Cadillac CTS was in that running. The Buick Enclave didn't win the Truck of the Year, nor did the Chevy Tahoe Hybrid. But to me, the fact that 4 of the 6 top vehicles, according to North American journalists, were General Motors products shows this company has real depth. Yeah, they did win overall car and truck last year, but this shows this isn't just a one-shot deal. Now, a lot of people put the credit for this resurgence in their product to Bob Lutz. He came over from Chrysler a few years ago, and basically he told his designers and engineers, stop giving me your second best. Give me your best. We'll support you. We'll back you up. A friend of mine named Jack Keebler used to be an automotive journalist. He now works under Bob Lutz, specifically chasing down some of these quality issues. He told me some stories today that they go out to suppliers and say, you know, if you put that much release agent into the mold so you can pop those panels out quicker, the quality goes down. So slow down. We're not going to accept parts unless they're as good as the parts that you bid on to get the business in the first place. And that's really commendable. Jack also says that the bullseye target is the center of the driver's seat, the things the driver can feel and touch every day. If there's a little nick on the steering wheel, he's going to feel that every time he gets in the car, and he's going to hate the thing. Now, you got cars like the Malibu, you got cars like the Tahoe, the new GMC Acadia. You get into these interiors, and they're as good as anything built anywhere in the world. And we got to give them credit for that. Now, I'm not saying if you don't have GM stock, you should rush out and buy some, but maybe if you have some, you might want to hold on to it for a bit. Because, you know, we've been getting letters and emails from viewers for years now saying, how come you guys spend all this time talking about the imports? Well, it's because the imports were interesting and they were good. Now that the domestics are getting interesting and good, we're telling you that too, because you come to motoring for the real story. I'm Jim Kenzie.
You know, the consensus among a lot of automotive journalists who are driving this new Infiniti EX35 here in California is that the car will either be a big hit or get lost in the crowd. Personally, from a drivability point of view, the EX35 drives like stink. Lots of power, and it gobbled up those twisty turns with enthusiasm. Now, they talk about the coupe-like design to it, but personally, if you look at that 3/4 look, it to me looks a lot like the FX35 and almost the same size. The feeling is, with the new upcoming FX models, that Infiniti will raise the benchmark and maybe give the EX35 a little more breathing space in the showroom. Now, me, I'm not a big crossover fan. If it was me, I'd purchase the G35X. But then again, a lot of people said this really is a G35 wagon. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
And Motoring's Car of the Year for 2008 is, well, you'll have to wait till next week for that.
Come on, Graham. I don't want to wait a week. You have to tell us.
Oh, come on. All right, ladies.
No, now.
Cut.
Motoring 2008 on TSN has been brought to you by the new Q horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.